It's the third Saturday in October as Alabama heads to Knoxville, Tennessee to take on the Volunteers, helping us break down all things Alabama to this point in the season and, of course, this game on Saturday afternoon. Cody Goodwin of 24/7 Sports, he joined the show and, again, covers all things Alabama Crimson Tide and does a great job doing so. Cody, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time.
No, I appreciate you having me. It's funny, the third Saturday in October, right? Just legendary SEC rivalry. But the weather outside feels like the third Saturday in November, man. Like, this is some like real true football weather we got going on in the lead up to this game.
Football weather indeed, my friend. Yeah, looking at the weather for Saturday night in Knoxville, we're going to get down, I think, into the low 50s, maybe high 40s, like you mentioned. That's cold in SEC country, it feels like. But either way, the heat will be turned up on the field. Cody, I want to talk first about what you've seen from Alabama to this point. Again, sitting at 5-1 overall, 2-1 in conference play. And I don't think there's any other team in the country, Cody, that I can say maybe Alabama has the best win and arguably the worst loss in college football this season. When you look at the 2-week stretch of beating Georgia, losing to Vanderbilt, but again, 5-1, all their goals in front of them. But, then you escape death against South Carolina. You argue you should have lost that game. What do you make of this Alabama football team in year one of Kalen DeBoer? And Cody, I'll ask you this simple question. As someone who was at that game in Tuscaloosa between Alabama and Georgia, what happened at halftime? Did the Monstars steal Alabama's talent? Because I was ready at halftime to proclaim, hey, this program might be better without Nick Saban. The team might be better without Nick Saban. It felt like the most no-brainer statement of all time to say Alabama is the best football team in the country. Jalen Milroe is the best player in all of college football. And it's been a very different story since then, it feels like.
Yeah, it's a lot of very high variance with this Alabama team, right? You had that first half against Georgia where they looked like, not just the best team in the country, but like bona fide national championship favorites, right? Like just the way that they came out and just punched Georgia in the mouth. And then you also hit on it, right? Like at the 10 quarters, I feel like since then we have seen kind of the low end of that, just variance of this Alabama team. We've seen them look great, right? And even, I think going all the way back to that Wisconsin game, right? 42-10 in Madison. And you look at the way Wisconsin's been playing in the few games since then, that win is looking better and better. The win over Georgia is going to stand up over time. The very next week, right, they lose to Vanderbilt. And I don't know that loss by the end of the season is going to look as bad as maybe it did then, or, the actual loss, what it means resume wise is going to look maybe as bad as perception, right? Because, they haven't lost Vanderbilt in 40 years, right? Like Alabama does not lose to Vanderbilt. Well, slightly different Vanderbilt. They got a quarterback. They got a pretty good offensive brain trust there. Clark Lee's doing some nice things. I don't know that I would worry too much about that, but I think what we've seen really the last 10 quarters from Alabama, just really confusing, sloppy, undisciplined play, right? And, Georgia in the second half, like that's Georgia, right? They got Carson Beck. They still got dudes. They've got 4- and 5-star guys all over the place. At some point, I felt like Georgia was going to punch back in that game, and they did. And it turned into the thriller that I think we all thought that game was going to be from the start. The game against Vanderbilt was just like the perfect storm of things trending more Vanderbilt's way than Alabama's way. Because you look back at that game, Vanderbilt never trailed. I don't know that result was a fluke, but, Alabama gets down 13-0 fairly quickly. That's after, Vanderbilt has that beautiful opening script, scores a touchdown. They have the deflected pass that they jumped on, took back for a touchdown. That allowed them to kind of do that pistol option run offense that they love to do. That allowed them to just kind of find yards and eat clock, right? And when they do that and they move the ball consistently, it kind of forces Alabama to play next to perfect in the second half. And the couple opportunities they had to go take the lead, they couldn't do it, right? Back to that sloppy, undisciplined play, right? Milroe had the illegal forward pass on that 50-yard gain, negated that. And then, they're down 33-28. They move the ball right across midfield. Looks like they're about to charge down, score touchdown, take the lead. Pritchett gets beat on, a pass rush. Milroe gets sacked, fumbles the ball. Vanderbilt takes it, goes back down and scores. So weird game. The weird vibes lingered into this South Carolina game where, again, they look good, especially the offense. Like, they looked fine. They looked like they're about to go into halftime up 14-0. Then the last 2 minutes happen, and that probably requires an entire 5,000-word expose just because of clock management and what's going on the in-stadium scoreboard and what does DeBoer see. And, what does that mean for play calling there right before half? But I mean, long story short, right? They, South Carolina converts a 4th down for a touchdown. Milroe makes what's been a pretty, mostly played mistake free this season, right? Makes a pretty big one on the safety, then makes another one on the interception. And then South Carolina comes out. Alabama's defense can't get off the field in the third quarter, or at least on that opening drive of the third quarter, right? 5 consecutive third downs made. And next thing you know, it's a rock fight. So it's just, I don't know, man. It's been a really confusing 10-quarter stretch here for Alabama. And now, I give them credit, I guess, for, closing the deal against Georgia and surviving against South Carolina, because now the next 3 games, starting with Saturday's game against Tennessee, it's a pretty pivotal stretch for the Crimson Tide, just in terms of where do they want this season to go? What are their postseason hopes? Things of that nature, right? Because they got Tennessee, they get Mizzou at home, Mizzou maybe a little underwhelming, but still kind of dangerous, right? Bye week, and then LSU in Baton Rouge at night, probably, where they don't lose, right? So pretty important stretch coming up here for Alabama. Which version of Alabama is going to show up over the next 3 games? Your guess is as good as mine, but it's going to determine what the rest of their season probably looks like.
Cody, we knew there'd be a transition going from Nick Saban to whoever the next head coach was. It didn't matter who took over in this spot. There was going to be a transition. What is the trust level like within this fan base with Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan, Kane Womack, the entire staff? I mean, obviously we've seen that, when you've got your fan base making a to-do about what T-shirt or what apparel your coach is wearing on the sidelines, things are kind of going sideways. So, what is the overall just mood, I guess, in Tuscaloosa and amongst Alabama fans with its coaching staff? Because there's been a lot of criticism of them over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, there's mixed reviews across the board, right? I think there are those diehard, passionate fans that want Alabama to win 50-10 every week. They want them to, the diehards who were maybe a little too spoiled by what Nick Saban was able to do for 2 decades there. They want Kane Womack fired. They want Kalen DeBoer to, be all dressed up and look a little nicer and not wear, T-shirts that look like he got them off the rack at Walmart while he's on the sidelines, right? And I think a lot of those fans, I don't want to say they were looking for a reason to jump off the bandwagon, but I think, the loss to Vanderbilt, the continued sloppy and undisciplined performance against South Carolina, just the way that game unfolded, that was maybe their reason to jump off and to react the way that they were. I think there's also, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got a fan base that feels pretty good about the offense overall, right? I know they only scored 27 points against South Carolina, but, consistently a pretty high scoring team. They moved the ball fairly efficiently. Jalen Milroe, I think, has taken pretty big steps forward under Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan. He's got a really good offensive brain trust this year that maybe he didn't have last season. The defense leaves a little bit more to be desired, but I think, again, we're talking about the other end of the spectrum of Alabama fans here who, it's a new system. Alabama had run, Nick Saban's pattern match defense for 2 decades, and it was tried and true and it worked. And now you've got Kane Womack doing the more vision-based swarm defense. And, it's had moments, right? They really, I know that Wisconsin had to change quarterbacks in the first quarter of that game, but, Alabama more or less shut them down, right? The first half and really the first quarter against Georgia, they rattled Carson Beck in a way that he really hadn't been throughout, his couple of years as the starter in Athens. And it was really, really impressive. Since then, run defense has been a little leaky. The secondary has shown that it can be had. There's some holes there. There's some missed assignments. There's some, guys maybe not doing their job on a, properly on a play-to-play basis. It looks like more the defense is more maybe thinking as opposed to just kind of playing and going. And, it can look like the defense is really getting overpowered, especially at the line of scrimmage and stuff when there's a lot of indecision. And that's what I think we've seen a lot over the last, really 2 games, but 10 quarters probably from Alabama's defense, right? Carson Beck's good enough that you weren't going to hold him down for 4 full quarters. But just the way Vanderbilt was able to use a lot of pre-snap motion and eye candy to kind of get Alabama's defense just on their heels a little bit. South Carolina did a little bit of that too. Also just the weirdness of the way that game script unfolded, just, it kind of put them on their heels a little bit as well. So I think there's the offense has been good and they've shown elite moments, I think, at times this season. The defense has struggled recently, but they've shown some promise. From there, it's, I don't know. Like I think most fans, you've got your extremes on one side that want to overhaul everything because they're only 5-1. There's a lot of fans on the other side that maybe showing a little bit more patience. I think if you'd have told Alabama fans at the start of the season that 6 games in, they'd be 5-1 overall, 2-1 in SEC play, I think they'd be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The route that Alabama took to get there, I think that's what has people confused, right? Because, again, talking about that high and low variance, right? They beat Georgia. They looked really good. Then they lost to Vanderbilt and looked really sloppy against South Carolina. So it's kind of, what Alabama team are we going to get every Saturday? We're not 100% sure.
And Cody, that leads me to this game this weekend, the third Saturday in October, Tennessee and Alabama. I think both fan bases probably feel the same way. I don't know that either fan base feels all that great about where their football team is at. But as you know, Cody, and I know, and we all know, somebody has to win this football game. Whether they play well or not or get answers to questions they have is yet to be seen. But somebody's got to win this football game. So, Cody, when you look at Tennessee, what you've seen from them thus far and your breakdowns of them, what are some areas that give you concern for Alabama in this matchup? And what are some areas you feel like Alabama maybe has the advantage and can exploit on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think concern Alabama's run defense. Tennessee's offense, I think, has come back down to earth a little bit since they've hit the SEC schedule, right? They were lighting teams up through the non-conference as most of these SEC teams do. But, they really, I think, have come back down to earth a little bit. They're leaning a lot on their running game, right? Dylan Sampson has been tremendous these first 6 games for the Vols. And, I think he's going to continue to be the bell cow, the workhorse, well, whatever you want to call that. And you look at Alabama's run defense, not like super leaky, but susceptible, I think, to the run. So, and Dylan Sampson is one of those guys that's going to fall forward and gain, 4, 5, 6 yards of carry every single time. He scores a touchdown like every 8 carries, I think the math breaks out to. So, Alabama needs to figure out how to stop the run. And it's going to sound crazy because I'm a big fan of Nico. I think he's going to be super, super talented. He's also still a first-year starter, still a freshman, still going through the SEC schedule for the first time. I think Alabama's got to make the kid beat you, right? And I know that the Alabama secondary has been a little susceptible, especially over the last couple weeks. But, I think until Nico proves that he can beat him, you have to make him do it, right? You got to at least put him in the position. So, if I'm Alabama, I'm probably focused more on trying to stop the run than I am trying to really, make sure that they don't give up any big or explosive plays that we know Tennessee can do. In terms of strengths, though, I kind of the opposite, right? I really like Jalen Milroe in this game. I think Alabama's offensive line against Tennessee's defensive line and really just the defensive front as the whole is going to determine a lot. I trust Alabama's brain trust. I trust Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan. I trust that they're going to be able to put a plan together. So as far as undisciplined and as sloppy as they've been for the last few games, they get up for these big games. You look at Kalen DeBoer's track record, right? They beat Oregon 3 times in 2 years. They've beaten Texas twice in 2 years. They got up for that Georgia game. That was a phenomenal first quarter, first half against the Bulldogs. I think they're going to get up for this game. I think he knows that it matters, right? Just within the fan base. It also is a pretty big opportunity for Alabama to go get another big win for their playoff resume. And there's not very many of those left after this 3-game stretch. So you got to get the big wins while you can. And then you just look at the way Jalen Milroe's played. A few mistakes over the last couple games, but by and large, he's played really, really well, right? He's throwing the ball a lot better. He's hitting those short, intermediate, and deep passing routes. He has leaned into running the ball more because he knows that it's going to open up the offense a lot more. Shout out to the coaching staff for really kind of impressing that on him. I think he knew that last year, but the coaching staff was really let's see if he can be more of a traditional drop back passer. He's improved in those areas, but his first step burst, he's the best athlete on the field 9 times out of 10 every single game he plays. So use that to your advantage. The coaching staff has. And that's why, I really, the offense has been fine this season. I think the offense will continue to be fine, even against a very, very good Tennessee defense. But it's going to start up front. They got to protect Milroe. They got to give him time. And they got to give him the opportunity to maybe at times create some of those out of structure plays that most college defenses struggle with. If they can do that, I like the way that Alabama's offense matches up against what's, again, going to be a very, very good Tennessee defense. But if you could find a way to clear that Tennessee defensive front, I think Milroe can make some pretty big plays in this game.
Cody, you touched on something I wanted to hit on. At one point, Alabama obviously had won 15 straight matchups in this series before the 2022 game, which was obviously the last time Alabama was in this building at Neyland Stadium. won last year, but this is the first third Saturday in October for Kalen DeBoer. Cody, how do people talk about this rivalry, and how important do you feel like it is for Alabama and Kalen DeBoer specifically to get off on the right foot in this series?
Yeah, I think that matters. I think that he understands kind of the I don't want to call it pressure, but he understands what is at stake here within the fan base, for the fans, for the school, one of these old school SEC rivalries. He's aware of what it means. And, I think just the added bonus of like, hey, man, like this is a big playoff resume type game for both teams, right? Because, you look at Tennessee's schedule, they probably have fewer opportunities moving forward to try and collect a big win to help boost their resume a little bit. So, that's going to be added to it. But like, it's a big game. It's going to be in the afternoon in a hostile environment. We asked, DeBoer earlier too, just, hey, like, what have you learned about this? And he went on and on about how, like, hey, like this is a big game. It's, he's been asking guys in and out of the building. He's heard from fans. He had his radio show on Wednesday night, and fans were just, hey, like, this is a game we normally don't lose. This is a game we can't lose, right? Like that's, that type of vibe. And so, yeah, I think he's fully aware of what it means. I think he's also really focused on, kind of the X's and O's of the thing, and also bigger picture, like, hey, this can help continue to push Alabama's playoff resume. And it's a game that they probably need to have, if for no other reason than to maybe relieve them of some pressure moving forward over the next couple weeks. Because, if you lose this one, I don't know that your playoff hopes are totally dead. And I hate to make everything about the playoff, but that's just, when you've got a team like Alabama that's got the pedigree that they have with the talent that they have on the roster, that's the lens through which you're always going to view the season. So I don't know that a loss to Tennessee kills their playoff hopes entirely, but it definitely drops them squarely on the bubble. And that's not exactly a place you want to live still with 5 games left to go in the season, and the vast majority of them obviously being SEC games.
Cody, Alabama a slight favorite in this game, but again, on the road in Knoxville, it feels like a coin flip at best. Key or keys to the game for you for Alabama to go into a hostile environment and get that victory?
Yeah, they got to clean up their play, right? We talked about the sloppy, undisciplined play. You got to limit penalties. You got to get off the field on third down, right? Which means, getting them into second and third and long, not, second and third and manageable. I think that, again, comes back to stopping the run. You're probably not going to fully stop Dylan Sampson, but can you limit him? Can you make him earn his yards, right? He's averaging 6 yards a carry. I'd like to see that come down a little bit. Apply a little pressure on Nico. I know that Tennessee's offensive line, especially the tackles, have maybe struggled to protect him, which, again, you're talking about a freshman getting a little happy feet sometimes. Can Alabama's pass rush impact this game? Can LT Overton get in the backfield? Can Quandarius Robinson get into the backfield? Those types of things. So, protect the ball, clean it up, and, make sure that Milroe keeps upright and allow him to kind of do his thing. I think if, those 3 or 4 things, if you can win 2 or 3 of those pretty convincingly, I like Alabama's odds here.
Cody Goodwin of Bama 24/7 Sports does a great job covering all things Crimson Tide. Cody, let folks know, just in case they don't know, where they can check out all your work.
Yeah, man, Bama 247, part of the 27 Sports Network. So we've got, our website. We've got a fun fan message board that you guys can come along with and enjoy the conversation during the week, during game days. And then also we got our own show, our own podcast, Roll Pod, that we publish 3 times a week, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursdays to, preview, recap, have fun conversations regarding college football throughout the season. So yeah, man, it's a fun time. Come along and enjoy the ride with us.
Cody, appreciate you taking the time. Let's definitely do it again soon, and safe travels in Knoxville.
Appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.